This is the No More Wasted Days podcast, and we're your hosts, Sarah Kaufman Bradstreet
and Heather PG. Grab your favorite NA drink and listen as we share vulnerable stories so you never feel alone on your alcohol-free journey.
And gain insights from us as we break down our most used tips and strategies that have kept us alcohol-free.
It's time to break free from wasting any more of your days to the drinking, blackout, hangover cycle. Welcome back to another episode of the No More Wasted Days podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Heather.
And I'm Sarah.
So today we're going to be talking about boundaries. And this is a hot topic amongst a lot of folks right now. And it is imperative to learn about them, use them, no matter where you are in life, especially on your alcohol-free journey.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm excited about this topic because I am not good with boundaries. So I need this talk. But before we dive into that, I want to invite you all to join me for an alcohol-free April. My next 30-day alcohol-free challenge will be starting on April 1st. And if you check out the link in the show notes, you can find out all of the details. It does come with 30 daily videos and emails, weekly email check-ins, one live group call, an online app where all the videos live, and you can check in below each video. And I work hard to reply to every single comment that happens during that challenge, and also a printable journal and printable workbook. These 30 days can be a kickoff for you to a lifetime of being alcohol-free and no longer feeling like you're stuck in that drinking blackout hangover cycle that I was stuck in not so long ago. If this sounds like something you're interested in, go check out the link in the show notes, and I will see you in the challenge.
Yeah. I used to think I was good with boundaries. And I think folks who are still currently drinking struggle with them due to lack of honesty with themselves, people pleasing, and manipulating to get what they want. And I don't think that this is an often conscious manipulation.
No, I don't think so either. I think for me, I was unconsciously not setting boundaries, and it's something that I can see much more clearly. I never know if it's an age thing or if it is that I don't drink anymore. So my brain is working much more clearly now. But I'm a person who does not like to say no to people when I know they're not going to be happy with it. And I have a really hard time sometimes with things like I know that I really want to do, but they are going to disrupt the family's schedule. So then I know I'm going to be letting Ryan down in some way because I'm going to be putting more weight onto his shoulders so I can go do this thing that I really, really want to do that is super important to me. And sometimes in his eyes, it may not look super important. It just looks like, oh my gosh, you're just making things harder for the family, for the kids. We're having to rearrange our schedule, whatever. But a lot of times I've found out too, I create that in my head. I make up that story and I make things much harder than they need to be by not just setting the boundary and saying, hey, I really want to do this. This is really important to me. Do you think we can work this out? Like I had the hardest time saying that forever. I have a hard time doing it with people that I care for the most. And that's really hard because I have a hard time doing it with my sister. I have a hard time doing it with my parents. But I think those are the people that we have the hardest time setting boundaries with.
Yeah, I think it's often like the closest we are to folks. I think it's often overlooked, like that you can have boundaries with your spouse, your family of origin. So I think the best way, I love to define things. So what are boundaries? The way that I have come to describe them in the most simple way is what I'm okay with and what I am not. Boundaries are on behaviors and preferences about what we will do and how we will be. So it's oftentimes the hardest to learn is the least complicated. And I think just being really honest with yourself. What am I okay with and what am I not?
And it's not I have to remind myself it's not about everybody else, that it is all about me and that I need to feel the most comfortable, or that I need to be able to look back and go, wow, I made the choice that was right for me. I didn't make the choice that was going to make everybody else feel better.
And what boundaries are not? They're not threats, consequences, ultimatums, punishments, walls. This is a tricky one. As a person who lived 40 years on this earth with tons of walls and armor, and boundaries are not advice or a lack of empathy.
I'd love to talk more about the walls and what that looks like because I think that I often told people, "Oh, I set up walls. I don't let people in." I don't even know if that's really true though. The more I age, I'm like, "No, I'm kinda like an open book. I'll I'll tell everybody everything." I think for me, the hard one was the consequences. Boundaries are not consequences because for me, when I set a boundary, I feel like I am creating a consequence for other people and that
Yeah,
then they are gonna be mad at me, which is then a consequence to me. And I have really had to work on the idea that when I'm setting a boundary for myself, it's about me and I am not in control of anybody else's reaction to it. That's on them. And if they are not reacting in a healthy way, then they need to figure that out. And I don't need to figure that out for them.
yeah.
That has been really hard, but is getting so much easier. And I'm finding out too that I really am. I know I already said this, that the outcome that I am thinking that's going to happen doesn't ever happen. Like people are never as upset as I think they're going to be. Like one of the things is my parents are talking about moving up here and having property up by where we live and having a camper trailer on it, making themselves part time here and part time in their home state. And my dad's jazzed about it. Like he's just like I am. When you get an idea into your head, it's that whole like, I have had this dream since yesterday and nothing can stand in my way because he's just so like, okay, I'm already looking at trailers. I'm like, all right, we got to put an offer in on this piece of property first. But I'm so like, I know where you are because I am you. And he's already like, okay, we're coming up for a visit at the end of this month already. But that is not the visit that's the most important one. I think right when me and your mom get home, we're going to turn right back around and come back to you guys so we can find our trailer, get it on the property, bring you guys your kitchen island, which is a whole nother thing. And I had to go, ooh, you know what, Dad? I think June will work better instead of April or May. Like, we gotta slow it down, and that's just gonna work better for our family with everything that we have going on with building a house and moving a trailer off of our land and moving into this house. So, I felt so good when I did it. And you know what? He didn't care at all. He was just like, "Great, I needed that input. Thank you." Like, I think those were his exact words. And I
Yeah.
was as he was mentioning it, I was just sitting there being like, "Oh god. Oh no, I gotta tell him that's not gonna work." No, it was not a big deal at all. So, I hope
I
I
think people
explained that well.
yeah, I think people really appreciate clear, concise, so they know what to do. Takes a
Yeah.
lot of the guesswork out.
So, I would love to know an example of what it looked like when you would put up walls and maybe you thought those were boundaries or what that looked
Yeah.
like.
I think with certain family members, I thought I was setting boundaries, but I was just trying to not feel the feelings,
Mm,
hence the wall versus the boundary. And nor was I communicating the boundary, which is not fair to the me or the person I was trying to set them with.
yeah.
And the more walls that grew, the more resentment happened. So I think, one of the good reasons to have many good reasons to have boundaries is they build trust with you and the other person, yourself, create freedom, prevent resentment. They do foster intimacy and protect the relationship. And it's important to know that they are for you, not other people. So to be more clear about the walls, if I hadn't communicated the boundary, that's more like a wall, like not wanting to feel the feelings.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's almost the not quite a silent treatment type thing. It could be, but it's just the I'm not going to discuss that.
Yeah,
Instead of having a conversation that might only take 5 minutes, I'm going to hope that people can just read my mind.
right. And avoid,
Hmm.
which is I consider myself as a drinker and myself now two different people. And I did that more as a drinker because my emotional intelligence was in the toilet, along
Yeah,
with many other things.
I understand that completely. That's why I'm chuckling a little bit. But my boundary was like setting boundaries for me was drinking because I could push the thing down. I could stop thinking about it and not deal with it. And that's what I did. And then it would come time for, because the thing is, your drinking doesn't stop the thing from happening, right? whatever you're saying, I don't want this, like, I don't wanna deal with that right now. Well, it's gonna come up, it's gonna happen most likely. And by just pushing it down and not dealing with it, you're setting yourself up for this train wreck and something that you are unhappy with. And that's exactly what happened to me. And it would be things like I needed to set a boundary with my parents. And it was something that was better for our whole family with my kids and my husband. And I wouldn't do it. And instead, it would just be okay, my parents are going to kind of get their way because I did nothing. Now I've upset my husband and my kids and myself most of the time because it was easier not to deal with it. I bet parents are the hardest people for most people to set boundaries with
Yeah,
because they're the boundary creators when we grow up.
right. A friend of mine told me about, like, parents, they kinda they push your buttons because they installed them.
Yeah,
How genius is that?
that is so genius.
So going back to boundaries with your family of origin, I think that's very hard.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people who drink a lot or use other substances are trying to escape from the need to be in control. And what I'm trying to learn about is the difference between being in control and being in charge.
Mhm.
More to come.
I like that. Being in control and being in charge, two different things.
Yeah.
Yes. I have a lot of things I could say about that, about myself, because I am such a control freak. I'm going to need things to go exactly the right way that I have planned them in my mind and I have not told any of the people around me. And when they don't go my way, I'm going to freak out. And it's like, instead of just being in charge of my reaction to the current situation, which is what I'm working on.
Yeah. It takes practice. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
that's a lot of the reason I think there are objections to boundaries because you feel fears, feelings, friction, even physical harm, emotional consequences, and conflict. And most people do not like any of those things, especially conflict.
Yeah. Conflict is my number one reason for not setting boundaries. I
Yeah.
don't want to make anybody mad. I don't want to make anybody upset.
Yeah.
And
I
it's so silly the things that I get all worked up about.
It's a universal thing for sure. I think it's cool to look at a boundary not only as a tool, it is a level 10 life skill, but it's not the be all end all. And it's not something that we're taught in school or college. It is something that we have to learn.
No, I was going to say, no way are we taught it in school. I mean, even as being a teacher, I was the boundary setter in my classroom. I created the boundaries. I created what I felt the culture should be. That's something that I think I could have done better on is get the students more involved on that. Some teachers do an amazing job. So if you're listening and you're going, oh no, I have a great classroom culture. That's awesome. I struggled with that because I was very much just like, we're going to do things the way I want to do them. I'm going to create all the boundaries in this room. And it just, it doesn't always work when you're doing it that way. And you get people that are upset. And I love that you said it's not an end all be all. Be all
No.
end all. Or be all
Yeah.
end all is what it says in the notes. And then I said it differently. But that for me is almost that whole try something out for 15 minutes and you're allowed to stop. And it
Yes.
is the try the boundary out. And you can always say, ooh, that didn't work for me. I'm not going to do that one again. So I'm going to shift that and change it.
Yeah. And it takes practice. Like everything, it takes a lot of practice.
Hmm.
So when you're identifying, I've done this exercise with the Daymakers and in the workshop I taught March 1st. When you identify your boundaries, write what stresses you out in a circle and what does not stress you out on the outside of the circle. Look what you have written down and narrow down your non negotiables. That's where I would suggest to start.
And then are your non negotiables when you do that? Are they more of the stuff that is stressing you out, where you're going to
Yes.
start creating ways to eliminate that stress?
Yes.
Okay.
So an example of a non negotiable for me is I will not ride in the car with someone that's been drinking.
Yeah.
Or I could come up with a whole lot, but,
Hmm.
we just get really specific about your non-negotiables. I think that's a good place to start as a guide.
I do too. I like that even you gave one, you were able to give an example so quickly too, because when you said it, like, I'm like, gosh, I don't even know my non negotiables. But hearing that one, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's easy. That's like one you can create and say, sorry, I have a boundary with that. I'm not going to stand for that anymore.
Yeah. And I think that when you look at your values, this can also help you identify your boundaries.
Mhm.
So if you take a listen to episode 11 for more on values, you can help identify your boundaries.
Yeah.
And I have noticed if you get angry with a situation repeatedly, your values and boundaries may be being crossed.
Mhm. I that's a good indicator because you can start being like, "Well, when does my blood start to rise?" However you feel anger in your body. For me, it's like I can feel my body temperature start to go up. I feel sweaty. I feel I feel like nervous almost, like, "Oh, I'm not gonna know what to say." I can feel that anger coming. I need to start paying attention to that a little bit more and start saying, "When did it start? What was said to me that it got that to be got me to start feeling that way?" For me, I mean, a non-negotiable could just start being like, it's a non-negotiable to me that I'm not gonna react to trolls on the internet. It sounds so silly, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, but it is one it comes with part of my job that people say stupid things, and you guys, I know I react, I know I say things sometimes, I even create TikToks sometimes. And I try to do it in a playful way, but if everyone knew how many that I absolutely don't even respond to and I just hit the block button, I just need to get 100% on that though, I think. I think that could be such a good one for me to just start it. So start a
Yeah.
simple one, everyone. Like say, okay, that one, that's just strangers on the internet. That's not even, I can set that boundary for myself because I know it's healthy. I was going to say something. I feel like I'm going to get this wrong. So first, first I want to tell everybody definitely go listen to episode 11 because that is one where you can do some great journaling work and find out so much about yourself. Like I think it's one to go listen to like every 3 months, every quarter of the year and just reevaluate your values and get to the point where you can just do it on your own and just get used to really thinking, what are my values? Because value is this word that's thrown around. Oh, my life values. These are, and you're just like, what are they? Go listen to that episode. We'll link it in the show notes, but otherwise it's episode 11. So you can just go back after this. But the other thing I was going to say is I was listening to another podcast the other day, and she was talking about kind of, it was more of learning how to manifest things for your life. I'm very into that stuff right now. But she said, start thinking about what would I do if fear was not an issue in this. So if you're looking at something that's like a big thing, you know you've got to take it on and you know you've got to make that phone call or set up that appointment or do the thing. What would you do if fear was not an issue for it? And that for some reason that really clicked with me the other day and it made me go, "Oh, if I wasn't afraid of saying this thing and possibly hurting someone's feelings, then I would just put it out there because it's the thing that serves me the most. And that's the thing that you need to do because you're only stuck with you for the rest of your life. It's the only guaranteed relationship that you're going to have for the rest of your life. So you got to make yourself happy." So I hope that helps everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. Like when you're thinking about your boundaries, what would you be okay with or not okay with if fear didn't exist?
Hmm.
Or you could wave a magic wand.
Yeah, because I think it could be like fear, worrying about making other people angry, but I think the thing that comes down to it is the boundaries that I don't set are out of fear, and they are
Yeah.
out of fear of hurting other people's feelings, which I rolled my eyes as I said it because it sounds so immature, like, "Oh, I'm so worried about hurting everybody's feeling." But I am, and I know that a lot of people are like that.
Yeah. I want to invite you all to check out the Daymakers. We've got a lot of cool stuff going on.
We do.
And we have 6 to 8 meetings a month and a thread off of social media. And it's really fun. So come
Yeah.
on.
And we set up different things in the discussion thread, different topics. I try to have a weekly focus each week to help guide people through different areas that affect us on our alcohol-free journey. This week I'm giving up tools that are all about managing big emotions. Heather just did a call on a great strategy on managing those big emotions. So we really try to make it so you're constantly learning and bettering yourself on your alcohol-free journey. And I wanted to remind all of you as well that the 30-day alcohol-free challenge is open for enrollment. It will start on April 1st. This can be the kickstart to changing your life and having an alcohol-free life and having it happen with a little bit more ease, with a little bit more confidence because you have other people helping you along the way. If you join that, you get 30 emails, 30 videos, and then I do weekly email check ins. And you have the option to join the Daymakers when you sign up for that as well. So if you're kind of thinking, oh my gosh, maybe I want to do that, go check out that link in the show notes. And I'll also link Daymakers. That one is always in the show notes.
Yes. Come on, y'all. It'll be fun. I promise.
We make it
So,
painless.
yeah. So when we think about our boundaries, we could think about them, but guess what? We have to talk about them.
Yep.
And the best way to do this is be clear, honest, kind, and try not to assume.
That's my hardest one right there. Try not to assume. How many times have I already talked about that in the episode?
Yeah,
That I assume what other people are going to think, and it is never as bad as I really think it's going to be.
right. I think it could be a good way to like embrace kindness and give them the opportunity to let them tell you, you know?
Yeah, right? It reminds me of the whole socializing without alcohol. We think everyone's going to judge us. And then you go do it. You go hang out with people without drinking, and nobody cares. Nobody says a thing. And you're like, oh my God, I was so worried about it.
Yeah,
So try not to assume because it's usually a lot better than our brains create. Like our brains are trying to protect us from danger. So they probably are. Our brain's busy working out all these scenarios so we can figure out what we're going to do in a crisis situation. But you
yeah.
just figure out what you're going to do if everything goes right.
And enforcing boundaries, I have found from my own journey and folks that I work with one on one, is the most difficult.
Hmm.
So I'm going to give you an acronym to remember.
I just saw it and I was like, oh my gosh, we've got another acronym. You know, I love those.
I know. So you're going to use BIFF, BIFF. Brief, informative, friendly, and firm. I'll say it again. BIFF. Brief, informative, friendly, and firm.
I love that.
And this is where I think it is good to assume good intentions and don't ignore bad intentions.
Mm. I like that. And biff is so funny. It's like, don't biff by not setting up your boundaries.
Right. Don't biff up your life, y'all.
Don't biff
But
up
it,
your life.
I think in
That's a
terms of
shirt.
communication, it is. Ooh, good idea. Like it's so simple and you can practice, you could write it out, you can work with me one on one. I do this with my clients. We practice the language, the verbiage, and they practice with me. And then, then it rolls out into their personal life.
Man, I love that. I'm gonna have to remember that one, biff. And just I'm,
Yeah.
like, looking at it right now in the notes, trying to be like, commit that one to your memory because this is so simple. And the friendly is I know everybody listens to me on this podcast and thinks, "Oh, she just must be so friendly." Sometimes I feel like I am a very sarcastic person and I am working on it so, so much. I have finally decided in my not old age, my mid age, that sarcasm sucks. It's
Huh.
terrible. I'm totally like, oh my gosh, sarcasm just makes me sound really mean. It does not work to your advantage. And a lot of times it's very passive. It's me
Yeah.
not being able to say what I really want to say and state a boundary. And I don't come off friendly when I'm being
Hmm.
sarcastic. And I have the pleasure of being able to rewatch myself on YouTube episodes. And I was going through past YouTube episodes last week and I was like, oh my gosh, oh, that sounded mean. And I was like, yeah, if you didn't know me, that wouldn't sound right. I can't believe Ryan put that in the episode, but he's used to my sarcastic sense of humor. And I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, okay. But definitely I'm working on it. I think I used to think sarcasm made me really cool, made me have the best sense of humor in the world. And I think there's a time and a place for sarcasm, but I'm working on it because I'm working
Yeah.
on being friendly.
Yeah. I don't think I'm very sarcastic anymore.
Yeah,
I
we
used to
talked
be
about this on a
very sarcastic. Wow.
yeah. Do you think I think maybe it's a drinking related thing. It's a coping mechanism
Yeah.
and it's something you can slowly get rid of because we were talking about it on a Daymakers call. And I think I shocked a lot of people. I'm like, yeah. I mean, there's some things obviously that I'm still sarcastic about, but I try to make it now where people will 100% know I'm joking.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah,
That's really good reflection. Glad you talked about that.
I'm not great at it yet, but I'm working on it, like everything, always a work in progress.
Yes.
Like, that's what I love about the brief, informative, friendly, and firm. Don't
Yes.
use your sarcasm when you're setting your boundary.
No, it won't age well.
It won't work.
So when you're looking at your challenges, I always like to come up with solutions. So look at your fears, as Sarah and I talked about earlier. Most things are rooted in fear, if I had to guess.
Mhm.
So some examples of challenges with boundaries, like I'll be boring, I'll sound like a robot or a clinician, I'll inconvenience someone, I won't get blank from this person anymore. There will be consequences. And this is my least favorite. I will have to manage their feelings.
Oh, man. Mhm. That one right
I
there.
think that is so hard, and I would rather braid water than manage someone else's feelings.
I have never heard that saying. I love that so much.
I, I don't know that I've ever said it before, to
I
tell you
would
the truth.
rather braid water. Yes.
But a lot of people, especially people pleasers, they are managing other people's feelings, but they're really managing their own.
Mhm.
There's a wildly unpopular opinion about people pleasing. I've done the field research.
I was gonna say, so have I. That's another thing I've been working on a lot, not managing other people's feelings, because I really do. I feel like sometimes the micromanager in me is running around being like, "Oh, I hope my kids feel okay. Oh, I hope my husband isn't upset. Oh, I hope I can make everybody's day amazing." And I'm like, "Wait, just make your own day amazing."
Yeah,
And all of them can go do their own work.
right. And it's
Can go take
contagious.
care of themselves. Yeah, it really is.
If you're happy, other people be happy. If you're like emotionally monitoring, like, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you having a good time? Are you okay? It's it's kind of like dampening, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. I'm not great at it yet, but I can see places that I'm getting better and better. One thing, it's like building a whole house with your husband is a whole thing, everybody. It
I
is
can't
some
imagine.
marriage boot camp for sure. But I'm just like, there are times where I would be trying to manage his emotions so much because things are going wrong on the build or a mistake just happened. And I'm getting better now at just being kind of like, oh, oh well, or well, what are we going to do? What are our options? Like, instead of, it's almost like I don't even go into the emotional side of it because there doesn't need to be an emotional side sometimes. I'm starting to learn and just say, well, what can we do? How can we manage this? Like, and it is getting so much.
Yeah.
And there's definitely other places where I notice myself trying to manage everybody. And now that I've just started managing myself and checking in and saying, am I having fun? Am I having a good time? It's actually everybody seems to be having a good time now. So it really is like that manager in you is not doing you any favors.
Yeah. And it's so cool when you can start seeing the outcome
Mhm.
yourself. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I, I think in terms of like responses, when you set a boundary, it's important to remember like you need to practice what you want, figure it out, right? In order to ask for what you want, you have to know what you want.
Mhm.
And intimacy involves inconvenience. And I don't mean intimacy like sex. I mean intimacy like with your spouse, your family, your friends. It really does involve inconvenience. And I think I would rather have like a 10-minute verbal fight than 10 years of resentment.
That is so true. Because at first I was like, I don't quite understand the intimacy involves inconvenience. And then you explained it perfectly.
Yeah.
That some, and I think that is something I'm learning too, is it's just, it's really going to take 10 minutes, like you said. And I just got to get it out.
Yeah. It's hard. It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's a practice. It's
Yep.
worth it.
It's definitely, it is so worth it. And I did not set boundaries as a drinker. Oh my God. Like, I hope everybody's hearing this going, I need this. I know if you're brand new on your alcohol free journey, you might be saying, whoa, this is a lot. So then I suggest go to that values episode first. Live your life
Yeah.
alcohol free for a good 2 months. Come back to the boundaries episode then when you're
Yeah.
ready and you start going, oh, I need to start setting some boundaries. And you have to set boundaries for your sobriety.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
There are times where you just have to say, I don't really, I mean, that sounds like it's a very booze heavy activity and I don't feel like being there today. Maybe you would feel like being there tomorrow. Some days things don't bother me at all that are super booze focused, and some days they bother me so much. And I think that's something to note too, that your boundaries are probably going to shift as far as your sobriety goes.
Absolutely. I'm doing another workshop in April about the inner critic and boundaries with yourself, and more to
That
come on
sounds
that.
so cool.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really great. So, some prompts for y'all to think about. How can I be a little more myself in this situation? How can I let a little more of my preferences be known? How can I be a little more real? How can I let other people have their own feelings?
I like all those.
Yeah. And like something that works for me is like, what is a little bit truer when I think about something in my head?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you're thinking about your inner critic and whatnot, but like just in life, like what could be a little closer to the truth?
Yeah. And especially as you get to know yourself more, because I feel like there's a lot of self discovery. I don't know if I said that correctly, or there's just a lot of new self discovery that happens when you quit drinking. It's like you finally get to know yourself.
Yeah.
And I feel like for the longest time, people would be like, discover who you are. And I was like, I can't. I don't even know what you're saying when you say that. I don't know. I'm just floating through life making it happen. And now I feel like I actually have time and brain capacity to do that and start going, well, this is who I am. And man, it feels good, you guys. Like,
It
that's
is
the
so
thing.
liberating.
It really is. And to
It,
start saying, like, oh, I don't actually think that's cool. Like, that's a boundary that I'm going to set for myself. I'm not involved in that conversation anymore.
yes. Yes. And again, this takes practice. Use a lot of self compassion. And always remember when you are anxious or stressed or angry or in high emotion that your boundaries get looser and they are more difficult.
Mm, that's a good one to remember. I feel that with February was very stressful with our move and selling our house. And I do feel like a lot of my boundaries for myself, I let go. I stopped practicing my morning routine for a little moment, not very long on any of it. But when I would notice like, oh, I'm letting things into my life that I'm saying I had a boundary on. And now I'm not doing the things I said I would. Or I was speaking to my husband in ways that I wouldn't normally do it. I was probably being more sarcastic, just all the things, not showing up for my kids the way I want to, just all those little things that I try to work on all the time to live up to my values and boundaries that I set for myself. But man, yeah, February was hard. Boundaries
Yes,
were
it
all
was.
over the place.
Yes. Well, thank y'all for listening to episode 20 of the No More Wasted Days
Funny.
podcast. It's a huge milestone.
It really is. I know I was counting up, I was like editing the current podcast episode that I'm editing, which you guys have already listened to now. But I was like, oh my gosh, our next one's going to be 20. How to
Yeah.
sell Heather. Like we're going to record our 20th episode. Yeah.
So, yeah, leave us a rating, click subscribe. That'll help us stay visible to help more people.
Hmm.
Come join us in the Daymakers community. Check out the link if you want to work with me one on one about boundaries and values. I have been called the boundary queen.
Oh
So
my gosh.
come check it out.
She needs a crown for sure when you
I
lead
do.
calls and put it
Oh, I
on when you're
do.
going to talk boundaries. That would be so cool.
Yes.
And again, check out the 30-day alcohol-free challenge. It's starting on April 1st. Enrollment will close at midnight on April 1st, and there will not be another 30-day alcohol-free challenge that's happening live with me until July. So this is the time to get in and do that. So if you've been watching me on TikTok, listening to the podcast, and you're like, okay, now's the time. So go check out that link. And I'm going to reiterate really quick. Heather mentioned the leaving reviews. We love putting out this free content. Like, this is my favorite thing to do throughout the week as far as No More Wasted Days goes. I love researching it. I love recording it. I love editing it. And all I ask is that in return, you leave us a review to
Yeah.
say thank you. It is the easiest way to support our podcast, and it's 100% free. So you can say thank you for putting out this free content.
Yeah. That would be great. Until next week. Bye, y'all.